You signed a contract for 25 years, not 25 months, 25 years. Think about that for a second. In a world where many people never expected to reach 40, you just handed Rome most of your adult life. Maybe you imagined glory. Maybe you pictured charging into battle, sword in hand, crowds cheering your victories. Rome had other plans, because the thing that would define your life wasn't fighting, it was walking. And nobody warned you that the walking would be the hard part. Before you ever saw an enemy, there was training. And by almost every Roman warrior that survives, training was worse than war. You were handed a wooden practice sword that weighed nearly twice as much as the real thing. At first, that sounds insane. Then you spend hours swinging it, day after day, week after week. Your shoulders burn, your hands blister, your entire body aches. And just when you think you've adapted, they make you do it again. When the real sword finally arrives, it feels almost weightless. That was the point. Make today miserable so tomorrow feels easy. Everything in Rome worked like that. You trained in armor, you ran in armor, you drilled in armor. Some recruits were even expected to swim in armor. Somewhere nearby, a centurion was probably watching all of this thinking, yes, this seems perfectly reasonable. Then came your actual job, which, if you joined for the fighting, must have been deeply disappointing. Because most days, you weren't a warrior, you were a pack animal. A Roman legionary could march around 30 kilometers a day carrying his own equipment. Armor, weapons, food, tools, tent stakes, an axe, a saw, everything he needed to survive. Altogether, roughly 45 kilograms, almost the weight of another human being. They had a nickname for themselves, Marius's Mules, and it wasn't a compliment. Now imagine finally reaching camp after a full day of marching. Your feet hurt, your shoulders are screaming, your back feels broken. All you want is to sit down. Rome says no. Because before you can rest, you have to build a fort, every single night. Not occasionally, not when danger seemed likely, every night. The same layout, the same measurements, the same precision. Ditches dug, ramparts raised, tents positioned exactly where they belonged. It was like building a small city from scratch before dinner, every day for years. The Roman solution to exhaustion was simple, more work. And eventually, dinner arrived. If you were lucky. Most of the time, it was grain, hard military bread, porridge. Maybe bacon if supplies were good and fate felt generous. To drink, posca, water mixed with vinegar. It tasted exactly as unpleasant as it sounds. Nobody drank it because they enjoyed it. They drank it because it was what they had. Then there was discipline, and suddenly, even the marching seemed merciful. Centurions carried a vine staff, officially a symbol of authority. In practice, often used to hit soldiers. Too slow? Hit. Too careless? Hit. Made a mistake? Hit. Standing nearby at the wrong moment? Also hit. Some centurions became so hated their own men despised them more than the enemy. One officer was reportedly nicknamed "Bring me another" because he broke so many staffs beating soldiers he constantly needed replacements. Eventually, some soldiers decided they had enough. They killed him themselves. Not in battle, not by accident, on purpose. And honestly, it's difficult to be surprised. Punishment could be far worse. Fall asleep on guard duty and you could be executed. Rome believed one sleeping guard could doom an entire army before sunrise. Then there was decimation. Even the name sounds terrifying. If a unit broke and ran, Rome sometimes gathered the survivors together. Then they drew lots. One man in every 10 was chosen. Not the worst, not the weakest, just unlucky. The selected men were beaten to death by their own comrades. Imagine surviving a battle, only to discover you've entered the deadliest lottery in history. Whatever waited in front of you on the battlefield suddenly didn't seem like the worst option. But here's the strange part. When people think about Roman soldiers, they imagine constant combat. Swords clashing, shields colliding, massive battles. In reality, battle was only a tiny fraction of their lives. The real enemy was boredom, exhaustion, disease, infection. You spent years preparing for fights that might last only a few hours. And statistically, sickness was often more dangerous than any enemy army. But if you endured all of it, the marches, the punishments, the winters, the disease, the endless labor, 25 years later, Rome finally paid its debt. You were discharged with a pension, often a piece of land, sometimes citizenship if you didn't already have it, a farm, a home, a future. You gave Rome half your life. Rome gave you a small plot of land, and whatever remained of your knees. And somehow, in the ancient world, that was considered a fair trade.